If you like this video, please consider supporting the Oto Kano channel over on Patreon. Thank you. Welcome to episode 5 of the Color Theory 101 series. In this episode, we are going to kind of bring together everything we talked about so far in this series in the first 4 episodes. So if you've just come into this series with this episode, or you're not quite sure about all the terms that we've covered so far, I highly recommend you go back and watch some of the episode, because we're going to be throwing terms around like we know what we're talking about already. In the first episode, we covered the cool and warm colors. So if you're not sure about what colors are cool and what colors are warm and how to tell that apart, go and check episode 1. And in the second episode, we covered the split primary palette. So if you don't know what that is, or you don't know what colors you should pick for the cool and warm, yellows, reds and blues, then go check that episode out. In the third episode, we talked about making a palette with the 12 colors from the color wheel, which is how we made this. So if you want to know what colors I use for this palette, or what colors to start off from in brands of Daniel Smith, Sennelier, Holbein and Schmincke, and if you do want to use your own colors, you can use my suggestion as a starting point, and don't stray too far away from the hues that I selected, but as long as it kind of matches, totally fine, you can use any color you want. In the fourth episode, we covered the complementary colors, which is the colors that are opposite to each other in the color wheel, and how those pairs should neutralize each other. So if you are confused about whether the color you've got for a particular wheel is going to be suitable for your color choice, then do check out that episode. And if you're confused about why I label my palette as ABCD, then do check out episode 3, in which I make this palette and I explain why I highly recommend you put alphabet exactly like this on your palette when you make a palette based on the color wheel. So with all that covered, let's pull it all together and talk about color mixing that involves this stuff and this stuff, so that you can start mixing colors with confidence, as well as having full control of whether you get muted, or some people call it muddy colors, or not. So what I'm going to be doing in this episode is basically taking this palette, the split primary palette, and the 12 color wheel palette, and mushing them together because they work really well together. In order to do that, let's start by highlighting the primary colors, and I'm going to do that using these tabs. So my cool red is here, and my warm red is here. So that's the 2 red primaries that we have here. Then we have the ultramarine blue here, which is your warm blue, and then this is your cool blue. The phthalo blue, yellow shade or green shade is your cool blue, and ultramarine is your warm blue. And if that kind of scrambles your head and you get confused by that, then do check out episode 1, because we do talk about why this is warm and why this is cool. And then we mark out the yellows. We have the warm yellow already here. The problem with a 12 color wheel palette based on the color wheel is that it doesn't really make any space for a cool yellow like we have in the split primary palette. We only have 1 yellow. So what I'm going to do is bring another little palette wheel here, label it with a yellow primary, and then bring in my cool yellow here. I'm going to be using Aurelian by Holbein. This is a light fast version, and if you want to know why you should be careful with Aurelian and making sure it's a light fast version, I have a video for you which is going to be linked up here. So this is my choice of cool yellow. And if you want to know what other colors are good starting point for cool yellows in the brands I mentioned already, Daniel Smith, Holbein, Schmincke and Sennelier, then do check out the split primary palette, which is episode 2. So now we kind of have a 13 wheel palette that accommodates this and this. And that's exactly what I have in my own studio palette. This is my current studio palette, and we have the 2 red primaries, the Quinacridone Rose and Scarlet Lake here. We have the 2 primary blues. I have my own ultramarine blue normally here that I make. I've run out of that at the moment. And then the phthalo blue yellow shade here. I also have the permanent yellow deep, which is A. And then I have Aurelian next to it as my cool yellow. And so you can just throw in another yellow. If you have set up a palette like this that we kind of threw together in the 3rd episode, and you don't have a room for the cool yellow here, don't worry, just throw it onto here like this, because it won't matter that the 2 yellows aren't next to each other, and you'll see that in a minute. Now that we have the primaries marked, I am going to mark where the primaries split. So I'm just going to take a tape and mark this. There we go. And then go between the 2 blues and mark it like this. And then I'm just going to shift this a little bit. And mark it like this. I'm just going to put it here for now for convenience. So now we just slightly rotate this palette so that it matches the split primary palette. And we can do the same here just by drawing a line through the appropriate letters. So the red line is going to be between D and E. There we go. The blue line is between B and C. And then the yellow line is going to be between A and your cool yellow, which is why it doesn't matter that the cool yellow is down here, because we'll just put a line like that. And then we have 3 sections marked very clearly, as we have with the 3 sections here. Now, why am I suddenly starting to put all these tabs and tapes down on the palette? Good question. The reason why we do that is because this section is all kind of warm colors. We have the warm yellow, warm red, and the colors in between. This section is all cool. We have the cool yellow, and then going through all the greens that are cool down to the cool blue, and then we have all the violets here, which is a mixed temperature. Why is that important? It's important because when you come to mixing colors within a section, if you mix within the section that the color sits in, say we're going to mix the phthalo green, which is in the bracket E well, then if you mix it with any of these colors in its own section, it's going to make a really nice bright mix. Whereas if you start mixing with colors outside of its section, so say with a warm yellow, it's going to start muting that color down immediately, which was the whole point of the split primary palette. So I'm going to demonstrate that for you right now by mixing the colors. So let's use the phthalo green as an example. So this is the color we start off with. And I think this is the way I mix colors most often, is I pick a color that's nearest to the color I want. So maybe it has a bright green base to it, and then adjust the colors in whatever direction I want that color to change. And in doing that, I most often rely on the primary colors to change my main color. So for example, if I want a yellowy green, I would start off with a phthalo green and then mix whatever version of yellow that I want to mix into that color to get that yellow green. And if I want it more turquoisey, then I will probably throw in some blues rather than the colors in between. It's just the way I personally mix colors. So we have the phthalo green, and in the last episode we talked about using the complementary color to mute this color down. So let's do that. That's the first thing you could do to your own color when you come to mix colors. And we know from that episode what this is going to do is mute the color down, and it's a great way of creating shadow colors for whatever object you're painting. I think I had too much pink there. Let's add some more green to it. So we get nice muted range of colors that are perfect for using as shadow colors. I'm just gonna put more versions of the color down so you can have a look at the range of colors you can make from this. And let's just turn that back into a green color as well. So complementary colors are great for darkening that main color in a way that's really harmonious to the phthalo, and it's the trick I rely the most in terms of when I'm coming into shade an object that is already painted with that color. Now we said earlier that if you mix with any of the colors in its own sections, you're going to get a nice bright result. So let's try that. We get a really nice bright, kind of like a leaf green or phthalo yellow green. Really nice and bright. And then we said if you go over the line and mix with colors that are outside of the color's own section, you're going to get a more muted version. So let's try with the color that's in the A well, which is the warm yellow. So you get a lot more mossy kind of green, a little bit like Green Gold by Daniel Smith kind of color rather than this bright green color. The exact same thing happened on the blue side. So let's mix it with the C bracket, which is the primary blue in this well. You get lovely bright turquoisey color. And in fact, this is how you mix a phthalo turquoise. Is you take a phthalo blue, yellow or green shade and you mix it with phthalo green, and then you get this lovely color. Now if you go over the line and mix with a blue that's outside of this colors section, then it should mute things down. Now you won't see as much of a difference between the blues as you do with the greens, but this is definitely a softer version than the color we mixed with the inside prime. And of course, if you want a color that's kind of in between these, you can just adjust the mixture, or you could just mix with a color that is in between these colors. So let's use an F. Then you get something in between the color we already have, and then let's mix it with a bracket D. Then we get something in between as well. So we get a great range of colors here. And then of course, if you want an even more muted green, what you can do is mix green from colors that are completely outside the green range of section. So with a warm yellow and a warm blue. That way you get even more muted colors happening for you. So just by placing a few simple markers in your palette, you're going to be able to logically decide for yourself what kind of color you want to mix, and then be in full control of being able to make the exact kind of colors you're looking for. So my way of color mixing is pick the nearest color, decide first if I'm just looking for a shadow color, in which case I will use whatever color that I've chosen's complement color. Then you can make a nice range of darker colors. If I've decided I want a nice bright color mixture, then I work with the colors I have in that section and go, do I want, say, a light yellow green or a blue green, and use those colors. And if I think, no, I want to mute it down a little bit, I do want a nice bright color but a little bit muted, then I work with the primaries that's just outside the section. So if I want a muted yellow green, I go for this one, and if I want a muted blue green, I go for this one. And then if I feel like, no, I want it even more muted, I ignore the colors that are in the section, I even ignore the main colors, and start off with the two primaries that are just outside of that section, because that's going to give me the most muted version of green for me. So those are really good starting point of getting, I would say, 90% there in whatever color you are wanting to create. And then you might have to do a little bit more tweaking in terms of maybe throwing in a complementary if you like that color but you want to darken it a little bit, or go even further away from the section to get even more muted colors. So I hope that all made sense to you. It's a lot of information going into one palette, so if you don't get it straight away, please don't worry. Watch the video a few times until you're comfortable with it. If you kind of get lost with the terminologies I'm throwing, go back, watch the earlier episodes so that you're totally comfortable with terms like cool and warm colors and split primaries and complementaries and stuff, and then watch this video again. I also highly suggest you make this chart of mixing a color with its complement and then at least the inside and outside primary colors for either direction for all of the colors that are non-primary, so the B, C, F, A bracket, D bracket, E bracket and F bracket, so that you really see and get some practice in getting control of how you mix colors. And if you still have questions, do ask away in the comments down below. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions regarding using this method of sectioning your palette and either mixing within your section or outside of the section. Then you guys know I love talking about color mixing, so please do ask away. This is as heavily technical as we're gonna get in this series, so if this felt hard, don't worry, this is as hard as it's ever gonna get in this series. I hope this video was useful to you. If it was, then please do give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already. Thank you so much for watching this video, and thank you to all my patrons for your wonderful support, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!